There's something to be stated about a franchise that influences other creators that they would hope to take said series into another medium of entertainment. Originally a tabletop game released in 1988, Cyberpunk has left a lasting impression on all those who have taken part in its dystopian presentation. Though game creators have praised the original version and its expansions from afar, it wasn't until 2007 that a game developer attempted to bring the action to a digital realm with a side-scrolling platformer. Looking to build upon the standards set by a small developer and the source material, CD Projekt Red has found itself graced with the opportunity to deliver one of the most anticipated games of not only 2020, but of an entire gaming generation. Unfortunately, the news spread fast that Cyberpunk 2077 wasn't in shape for release, and gamers bombarded the software and its developer with hate. I needed to know if Cyberpunk 2077 was a true dumpster fire, or just a product not living up to the hype. Similar to many open-world role-playing games before it, Cyberpunk 2077 gives one a sense of freedom to explore and dictate what the player wants to accomplish. But the point of every RPG is the story, which in this game's case kicks off with the player crafting a character with the game's limited options, including a lack of changing one's height, or even giving a male character an afro, though the player can decide if they want their character to be the equivalent of a Ken doll in regards to their genitalia. After choosing to be one of three classes alongside the character creator, Street Kid, Corporal, or Nomad, the player is given a class-specific introductory mission before the story mostly becomes the same, with the protagonist hoping to leave their mark on the world and make a lot of money in the process. The gameplay is also very similar in presentation, mixing and matching bits from other open-world games like the 7th and 8th generation Fallout games, Watch Dogs, and the developer's own The Witcher 3. After over 100 saved hours, probably another 5 hours of lost progress due to bugs, my version of V, the main protagonist is named No Matter What, I finished the main story after painstakingly completing hundreds of mundane vigilante missions, some very interesting side quests including taming psychotic murderers, seeing all the trophy-related endings including the secret finale, and making a load of backup saves for those attribute and money-specific trophies to attain the Platinum Trophy. Instead of being another third-person action-adventure open-world experience similar to The Witcher 3 with RPG elements aplenty, Cyberpunk 2077 goes the first-person route, while still having a plethora of RPG factors in an action-adventure environment with guns, melee weapons, and hacking abilities rooted in the tech known as Cyberdeck, that can be purchased from Ripper Docs, surgeons who will implant cyberware in the protagonist, including a second heart that revives V after dying once, and implanting mantis blades, so V can turn into a cybernetic Baraka from Mortal Kombat. Similar to a lot about Cyberpunk, the initial presentation of cyberware is more profound than what it really is, as a majority of the implant options are usually based in the same manner, with rarity being the determining factor as to how effective it is compared to its counterpart, like the aforementioned Mantis Blades' epic version featuring more damage output than the rare offering. This rarity system also ties into weaponry and clothing, with the latter being the game's equivalent of armor that can be swapped out at any time the player sees fit. A majority of these weapons will most likely come from fallen enemies, though the legendary items need to be created via crafting. Like cyberware, weapon rarity will differentiate two similar looking pistols from one another, as one will be more effective in doing damage than the other. Some weapons have elemental factors like setting enemies on fire or poisoning them, while others are smart and have homing bullets. Shotguns and rifles can be charged for extra damage, but sometimes it will result in missing the target due to enemies constantly moving. Some armor, weapons, and cyberware can use mods to increase vitality, critical hits, and how much RAM is restored when hacking, respectively. Other weapon additions, like adding a scope to a pistol, will shockingly lower its base stats. Another factor in the usage of cyberware, weapons, and armor is the multiple leveling systems. First, there's the character level that helps boost V's base stats and provide attributes and perk points, depending on the level attained. Second, there's street cred, which usually levels up faster than the character's general level and is responsible for unlocking side missions and certain supportive items. Third is the aforementioned attributes and perks. There are 5 attribute categories: body, mostly connected to health, stamina, and melee attacks; intelligence, responsible for V's hacking abilities; cool, for the stealth efficiency; technical ability, for crafting possibilities; and reflexes, when it comes to handling guns, all of which can be upgraded to level 20 while sporting up to 3 skill subcategories. The subcategories house the various perks connected to each attribute and its subsequent skill, like being able to take control of enemy turrets via the quick hacking skill connected to the intelligence attribute, or the body attribute allowing V to become more armored when using the human shield, courtesy of the athletic subcategory. One very important note is the fact that each skill is capped by the current attribute's level. So if the technical ability is at level 5, the subcategories can only reach a max level of 5 until the player upgrades the attribute. Even though it's impossible to fill out the skill tree, the feeling that replaying the game to put perk points in different slots won't make that much of a difference is very prevalent because of Cyberpunk's core gameplay. From a gameplay perspective, a majority of Cyberpunk is paint by the numbers in regards to the open world first-person shooter genre. Gunplay is mostly satisfying, with the variety providing players multiple styles of play, from getting up close and personal with an electrified shotgun, or using a sniper rifle to pick off enemies from a distance. Melee combat, however, is pretty terrible, with a lack of lock-on system and a poorly implemented dodge mechanic, where the player has to hit the crouch button twice, which may make V drop down instead of dodge. Blocking melee attacks works too slow and drains stamina and health, even if V pulls off a perfect parry. The latter is only alleviated with perk upgrades. Enemies have an incredible reach distance in melee situations, and still land punches and kicks even when V seems to be far enough away to avoid contact. Hacking proves to be incredibly fun to pull off when V is able to implant higher grade cyber decks, meaning hacking enemies isn't useful until at least halfway through the story. V can stand from a distance, invade a security camera courtesy of the little decoder minigame, spy on targets, and pick off enemies by overloading their synapses or overheating their core. The only issue with hacking is the scanner identification sometimes becoming overwhelmed by enemies and nearby objects. In regards to stealth, the system is perfectly acceptable, with V being able to sneak up behind someone, grab them for either a quick kill or a choking out for non-lethal players. Containers litter various areas, allowing for body disposal to avoid alerting remaining enemies as well. Driving is fine, though a little too loose and slippery no matter the environment. The gameplay's biggest inconsistency is the enemy AI. Very rarely is there a middle ground in regards to the AI's effectiveness in battle. At times, enemies can be rather ferocious and aggressive, with ridiculous sightlines and weapons that can put V down in an instant. At other times, including some major story missions, they provide no challenge, becoming sitting ducks while hiding behind rusted cars, or just forgetting V is even in the vicinity, even when their target is right in front of them. In regards to quests, a majority of the story opportunities, both minor and major, aren't much different in regards to the overall gameplay presentation seen in other games in the genre. With each mission and location in Night City comes a difficulty warning to alert the player whether or not their character is ready to take on what's about to occur. The higher the warning, the higher the impossibility of completing said mission. This is definitely more of a problem early in the game, as players will have to be very careful in handling firefights or even approaching stealth situations. Fetch quests, assassinations, and sneaking around in disguises are all here, with some harrowing and lengthy scenarios to mix things up, such as chilling with a new friend's surrogate family after saving his nephew from being harvested. What makes a majority of the quests so compelling are the NPCs. From love interests like Panam Palmer and Judy Alvarez, who are much more than just objects of V's affection, with their own personal problems and conflicts, to convincing a couple that they've been brainwashed and forced to run for Night City office. The twists, turns, and choices available during most of the missions showcase a level of detail and promise that many gamers expected from this experience when it was first announced. Spontaneity is a big plus in regards to pulling the player into a world that is constantly moving, including people calling V up when a player is in the middle of a mission, to let him know that they need to see V right now because of something that happened out of the NPC's control. Unfortunately for all the good in regards to mission presentation is the disappointment that after the first 30 minutes or so, none of the three character classes have any real narrative difference from one another. Playing as a street kid or a corpo doesn't feel unique after the first mission, other than some random class-specific dialogue choices that pop up from time to time, and a couple of side missions. It's sad that classes really don't mean that much in the game's plot when compared to what was initially promised by the developers. This disappointing feeling is topped off by the presentations of both V and the highly promoted Johnny Silverhand character, played by Keanu Reeves. Beyond some strict and questionable dialogue choice options for V during conversations, where he'll just pose questions or add excess exposition instead of making a meaningful statement, is the vocal execution, where V rarely sounds like anything but the most stereotypical cool bad boy who doesn't have a care in the world. Keanu feels miscast, as Silverhand is an angst-filled rocker turned anarchist revolutionary with very few redeemable qualities. The nihilistic way Silverhand sees the world makes sense considering his beliefs, but the absurd vitriol he has for almost everyone, including V, makes it hard to root for the guy, even when the player sees something tragic happen to Johnny via flashbacks. But nothing stands out more than the game's technical prowess, or lack thereof. Visually and sonically, Cyberpunk 2077 is pretty impressive, with various sounds including a specialized soundtrack, and glowing billboards showcasing events to come, including those strictly tied to missions. Though it is not as populated as one would have hoped considering the marketing, Night City is a testament to verticality in world building. Exploring the innards and surrounding areas of Night City will astound most, especially when V stumbles upon a robbery gone wrong, and everyone's favorite cybernetic hero has the chance to avenge the fallen. Players will have to do some work in adjusting their visual settings as the game's default settings are too dark. On the opposite end of the technical spectrum is the game's overall stability. Cyberpunk will go down as one of the most unpolished 8th generation games of all time. While waiting for the first PS5 patch to download and trying it out on a base PS4 saw a stuttering experience with numerous frame rate drops and graphical glitches aplenty, including a flashing V during the character creation. Starting a new playthrough on the PS5, the game proved better from a frame rate consistency perspective, but general stability plummeted, crashing at least 4 dozen times during a playthrough, including during the main missions, simply driving around Night City, and even as the closing credits rolled. Depending on when someone played the game, they may have found broken story quests blocking progress, including the first Johnny Silverhand mission featuring invincible turrets, a problem that wasn't fixed on consoles until nearly 3 weeks after the game's launch. Even after being delayed multiple times, Cyberpunk 2077 features so many bugs and issues, including the game auto-saving when V died during a lengthy mission that didn't allow for saving mid-mission, forcing a complete quest restart. Taking on the police can be crazy, with them literally appearing out of thin air en masse, and lacking features such as being able to bribe V's way out of a situation, as the developers promoted. Simply playing Cyberpunk 2077 is an exercise in fear and worry, with any player looking to not replay mission after mission, saving constantly, and even avoiding some of the game's core mechanics like crafting to avoid corrupted save files on PC. Sadly, if Cyberpunk 2077 came out in pristine condition from a technical aspect, it still lacks a lot of what was promised, including the unique narrative presentations for each character class. There are underwhelming melee options to complement the solid gunplay and stealth, while the narrative and its characters, both major and minor, are memorable for all the right reasons. It's terrible that Cyberpunk 2077 is essentially a victim of its own hype and promise. Though there are grandiose technical issues hindering everything from progress to simply choosing to sell an unneeded item, a lot of what makes Cyberpunk 2077 memorable is the set pieces, NPCs, and story missions in general. Just wandering around Night City and discovering something that seems completely unique to the player is a feeling one will experience multiple times, even if those unique moments involve an enemy continuously morphing. In a lot of ways, Cyberpunk is a solid purchase due to its strengths, but it also warrants an avoid in its current form, from a technical aspect while leaving someone wanting more. That more usually being associated with the character class avenues that didn't come to realization in the final product. CD Projekt Red is promising plentiful patches, free DLC, and even a 9th generation upgrade for early adopters. Considering what can and most likely will happen to gamers playing 2077 before the big patches promised for January and February of 2021 are released, it would be much wiser to wait at least a few more months, if not entirely, until the 9th generation versions are available, versions that should benefit from the patches. In a lot of ways, Cyberpunk 2077 is the video game equivalent of making it to your destination, and some overgrown brute is too stupid to move out of your way, and you can't get past him no matter what you do.
Run operations control.